Fantastic. So, welcome everyone. This is the kickoff session for our Spencer 2024 summer series. These weekly sessions are geared towards those in their early careers. So, that's college students, recent graduates, and high schoolers. If you could all take a moment to type into the chat box, we'd love to get to know you a little bit. We'd love to know, where are you dialing in from, which university you go to. So if you're comfortable enough doing so, please feel free to use the chat box and to tell us a little bit about yourself. This is also a fantastic opportunity for virtual networking. So if you would like to copy and paste your LinkedIn URL and include that in the chat box as well, that will make it easy for everyone so they could go through, click on the link, and connect with you on LinkedIn. So my name is Tandeka Nomvete, and I'm the Director of External Engagement for the Spencer Educational Foundation. Spencer is a nonprofit organization that supports future leaders of this industry. So that's college students that are interested in careers in risk management, insurance, and actuarial science, and we support students all across the US and Canada. So if this is your very first time here with us today, this is a super duper chilled and relaxed environment. So we encourage you all to take full advantage of this opportunity to learn as much as you possibly can and to network with everyone that is here today in the virtual room. So again, if you've just joined us, welcome. Please feel free to type in the chat box and tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you located? Which school do you go to? And if you'd like to connect on LinkedIn, please feel free to copy paste your LinkedIn URL. If you would all turn on your cameras, we would also love that so that our guest speakers today can see your beautiful faces. That would be absolutely amazing. And there will be opportunities to ask questions as well along the way. We do have a raise hand feature here in Zoom. So if you do have a question, feel free to click on that button, and that way your screen will pop up to the very top, and our guest speakers here today will be able to see that you have a question and they'll be able to address it. Throughout this session, I'm going to be popping various links within the chat box as well so that you can follow Spencer on LinkedIn, so that you can connect with the different guest speakers that we have here today, and also register for our upcoming sessions. So with that, we do have some wonderful guest speakers with us here today who are all members of the CICA Amplify Women Association. We have Teresa Severson, who is the SVP of Insurance and Risk Management at Kite Realty Group. We have Sherry Stubing, Senior Insurance Officer of Captive and Insurance Management at Aon. And we have Caroline Erdman, Captive Consultant at Highland Global Captive Solutions. So with that, Teresa, I will turn it over to you to share your screen and to take it away.
Thank you so much for that introduction and for allowing us to be here today to kind of talk to you about something that we're passionate about. It's our careers that we've had. I have been in the insurance and risk industry for over 30 years. So I started off on the brokering side and then did some consulting work, and I have been a risk manager now for the last 15 years. And in my capacity as a risk manager for Kite Realty, which is a publicly traded REIT, we own and operate open air shopping centers. I formed a captive. The captive is still up and running for 10 years now, and we've been utilizing that as a part of our overall risk and insurance program. And as Tadeka mentioned, Caroline and Sherry and I are all part of CICA, which is the Captive Insurance Company Association. And we're all members of Amplify Women's Educational Committee. So we're really here to talk to you guys about what captives are and the opportunities that exist in that field. I think it's a field that is not as well known, right, as some of the other disciplines within the industry. So we wanted to kind of share that. Caroline is newer into the insurance world, being an MRI graduate and being in working for Highland's Captive Consulting Global Solutions organization for just over a year now. And Sherry's kind of in between us, right? With 20 plus years experience, being both in the captive world, but also having had underwriting and account executive and brokering experience. So I think between the three of us, we kind of hit the entire length of a career life, right? So hopefully we'll be able to provide you guys with some information and some insights and answer some questions for you. So I'm going to start us off by just telling you the basics from a very high level. What is a captive? A captive in and of itself is not a form of risk transfer, but it is a licensed insurance company that is owned and controlled by those that it insures. I'm going to move my screen over here so you guys can see this. See, I'm already failing at my job. My number one job is to move the slides around. I'm already not doing
Not
that very
at
well.
all. You're doing great. Not at all.
But what a captive does, it is a formalized means of financing self-insure. It helps the parent, so that's the company that owns the captive, to achieve benefits that it may not get in the traditional market. And it can help us by, extending coverages and pricing that may not be available. It's also a way of kind of housing self-insurance on our balance sheets. So I'm going to turn it over to Sherry now, and Sherry's going to talk to you about why companies consider using a captive.
Thanks so much, Teresa. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So I will say, although I have 20 years of insurance experience, and 20 years ago, people used to joke that you fell into insurance, I actually chose insurance. I find it super exciting. I geek out all the time. I really enjoy insurance. And part of the reason why is because of a lot of the things that we're talking about right here. There's so much opportunity within the insurance world. And I love all your comments. There's so many people doing such cool internships. I'm sitting here and I'm looking at them and I was like, oh, so I hope to get to learn and meet some of you more often so that I can have the opportunity to learn more about your internships and how they're going and all the cool things that you might be doing, because some of these positions look really neat. So thank you so much for sharing. Teresa, I'm just going to go back one slide at why companies consider a captive. So for why companies consider a captive, we tend to generally look at it from three C's. Yeah, there's a lot of factors as to why a company may consider a captive, but these are the broad, overreaching areas as to why a company or parent company might consider a captive. The six C's are control, capacity, cost, coverage, compliance, and commercial. So what does that mean? There's a lot there. A lot of times with a captive, it's really kind of cool that you can have a lot more control over your claims management or how you want your program to look. So there's an opportunity there for you to, as your own insurer, to help you design how you want to handle things. Do we want to, for our claims, do we want to be more liberal? Do we want to be more closed? Do we want to handle things more broadly? Do we want to be more narrow in how we handle things? So there's an opportunity to have a little bit more control with a captive program. Capacity. Well, what does that mean? Capacity is how much I can take on. So if your risk management students are having a little bit more in the risk management world, you might realize that sometimes markets close their doors and sometimes they open their doors. And when they close their doors, it means that there's less capacity in the market. There's less room for them to take on more risk, more exposure to insure more companies. By having a captive, it allows you to have your own capacity. You have your own room to grow. You have that extra space, and it can help you. Sometimes it's very helpful when you're looking at a huge tower, which is a huge amount of reinsurance or a huge amount of insurance. Sometimes you can't always fill that tower, and by having a captive, it allows you to strategically figure out where it makes sense for you to put that capacity, or sometimes where you have to put that capacity. Hopefully you're not doing that too much, but it does happen. Cost. There's a lot of opportunity for you to help control the cost. Caroline will probably say this as well, and Teresa probably say this as well. There's a number of times where sometimes the commercial market will come to you and say, well, this is the cost. And you say, well, I have a captive. And they go, that's a great point. Here's the revised cost.
That happens a lot. That definitely happens a lot.
So captives allow companies to have a little bit more control, to leverage their markets, to have control over their costs. And coverage. There's a note here about fill gaps. One of the things that I've really enjoyed and one of the things I love a lot is my ability, because I'm an insurance officer, I don't do so much of the accounting side, but I do the insurance side. There's a lot of opportunity to find really unique spaces. So someone will come to me and say, hey, I'd really like to insure, and then something really random. And I get to work with all these great people to say, is that an insurable risk? And how are we going to do this? And then I get to write bespoke language, which basically means like new or manuscript or unwritten before language to help cover that exposure. So it could be, Lloyd's of London, the market in London, is famous for writing weird and wonderful things like, and I apologize, this is a young group, but Tina Turner was a famous rock star. She was famous for her legs. They'd insure Tina Turner's legs, or they'd insure, maybe something Taylor Swift does. Maybe whatever Taylor Swift is famous for, maybe her book of music, maybe they insure that. But there's weird and wonderful things that we can insure. Compliance, certain times, in certain regions, you can do one thing. Every regulator or every state, every country is very different. And so maybe you need help with that, and a captive can help with that as well. And then there's commercial. We can do extended warranties. We can help with a lot of handset programs are something that a lot of communication companies are concerned about. So that's something we can work with within a captive. So there's a lot of opportunities for parent companies or big commercial companies to really get an opportunity to look at their control of how they're doing their insurance programs, look at their capacity, their costs, and captives give them a lot of flexibility. Again, I just want to remind anyone, I know there's a lot of information. I get very excited about this subject. So if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, and Teresa or one of the team members will go to your question, and we're happy to answer them. This is a free-flowing event. So common captive coverages. I know we have a lot of risk management students here. So common captive coverages, and Teresa's just going to go to my next slide. I'm going to stick probably on property, general liability, cyber. We do have workers' compensation and auto on there, but you can see there's asterisks because of the fact that we usually do, in captives, we do what's called a deductible reimbursement. So if you're familiar with your auto policy, if you have a claim, they say, oh, well, you owe the first $250 of that, or the first 500. I think it's actually 1,000 these days. But you owe the first X amount of dollars. And so we can help cover that deductible. We can also do what's called excess. We do have to be a little leery on workers' compensation and auto, just because of the fact that a lot of those are state-run coverages. So we obviously work hand in hand with all the regulators and all the government officials. We want to make sure that we're staying on the right side. So we provide a lot of workers' compensation, deductible reimbursement, or excess. And sometimes there are self-insured states. There are states where they have self-insurement or self-procurement rules that we can do things like that. But as much as the common coverages are really cool, I like some of the in-common coverages. I like some of the uncommon stuff. That's where I really have a lot of fun. So if you have any questions about that, or any interesting coverages that you were wondering about, or any coverages that you've seen that you think are really interesting, feel free to put those into the chat. Let us know. But obviously, if you're working as an intern, confidentiality. So I'll always put that out there. So to make this happen, though, we require a lot of different groups. And I think this is where this is really important, is that people think of captives and they're like, well, I'm not an accountant. I can't be in captives. Or I'm not, an insurance officer like Sherry. Captives are amazing. They're huge. So with captives, there's a lot of money. There's a parent companies. There could be a lot of money involved. We need banks that are going to support those accounts where that money's going to come in and out of. You have insurance brokers. I don't work alone, although I might be the insurance officer for a captive. I work very closely with the commercial brokers. Where does it make sense for us to put this? Where are you having troubles? How can I help you place this? So we work very closely with brokers. Obviously, as much as we would love our captives to not have to have claims, it's not true insurance if you don't have an occasional claim. I know the claims people say, don't say that, don't say that. But there's going to occasionally be things that happen, and you need claims administrators. Legal counsel, that's not just for claims. Sometimes that's for your change in your board. It could be for setting up a new captive. It could be for dissolving a captive. And then for all that money that's going into the bank, you probably want to invest it. So you're probably going to need an investment manager or investment advisor who's going to help you out. And of course, with anything, when you have a business, there's tax. So we have tax advisors. I will fully admit, I am not a tax advisor. I can't help you with tax questions. Auditors to make sure that the captives, drawing within the lines, doing what they're supposed to be doing. The Department of Insurance. Every captive is domiciled in a state, which means that they're licensed and they do their business in a state. And for doing that, we have to work with that state to make sure that we're following their rules, that we're filing the right information that they need filed. And actuaries, so all the people who do those big numbers, they tell me every time, I'm like, can we do this? The actuaries say, let me look into it. And then they're the ones who crunch all those numbers and figure out, does it make sense? Can we do this? Is it true insurance? So there's so much more to captives than just being in accounting or just being in insurance. There are so many opportunities. And I will tell you, I am based in Vermont, which I will say is a huge domicile for insurance. And that being said, we have lawyers and investment advisors and actuaries that are specific to captives because there's so much work that they can do just for captives that they do that. So it's a lot of really cool opportunities within the captive service team. So I kind of touched on this, but I'm going to let Caroline jump in. There are a lot of career opportunities. I will say, as Teresa said, I started out in underwriting. I then was like, oh, I'm going to try broking. And then I went to account executive. And that's where I really got to learn more about captives. And I was like, well, this is really cool. And so now I'm an insurance officer in captives. But Caroline, I'll turn it over to you to tell about all the other opportunities.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. And if anyone has any questions about captives in general, please feel free to raise your hand or just drop it in the chat if you don't want to take your video off mute, but we will be more than happy to answer those. I know the captive industry is a little confusing at first. It's definitely complicated. And I know for myself, it took a while to get. So any questions, we are more than happy to answer. But I'm just going to kind of dive into career. So I'm going to go through the process of how to build a captive essentially, and how all these different players will play into building a captive. So what you're going to start with is usually you're the company. You're going to have the risk manager, or you could be the VP of finance, VP of accounting, you could be the CFO. We have a lot of different people come to us saying, hey, my company needs a captive. And not every company does have a risk management department. So sometimes we'll even see attorneys or someone liaising for a company saying, hey, I think this is something we need to get into. And that's really come to someone like me. And we'll go ahead and get them engaged in the process. So we do something called a feasibility study, which is really cool, where we assess the client's current coverages that they have in the traditional market, or if they already have a captive, we'll assess those coverages as well. And we'll go ahead and just kind of get once their coverages are decided and all of that fun stuff, we'll go ahead and pull in our actuaries. So our actuaries are some of the most creative people I know. With these creative coverages that Sherry mentioned earlier, sometimes there's not data for them. So they're searching and searching the internet just to find something, some kind of coverage, some kind of data. And then they're able to create projections for the next 5 years, just kind of detailing what this captive can look like, even though there's nothing like it out there right now. I like to say that the captive managers, consultants, we are dream makers. If you have an idea, we will make it happen in the best way we can. So that's how we kind of pull in everyone. So once the actuarial stuff is done, usually that's the time we'll go to the brokerage and fronting reinsurance carriers, which you'll hear us mention. And if you have any questions regarding that, please feel free to drop it in the chat. But we'll go to them and say, hey, we need some excess coverage. So that's going to be the coverage that sits on top of that captive. And we'll just kind of work out a deal with them to go ahead and reinsure our current captive. After that, we will usually go ahead and start pulling in audit, tax, and anyone else that would be instrumental in the creation of the captive. So usually our tax people, they'll come and talk to the captive and say, hey, here's what we believe is the best option for you. There's currently 2 options for a captive. One is more popular than the other. So there's an 831A and 831B, and usually the tax people will just kind of go ahead and let them know what the best option is for them. Then our auditors will also come in, and each year the captive is required to do an annual audit, usually per state regulations. So the auditor will come in, introduce themselves, and then they'll work with the captive management team once the captive is up and running to get those audits done. Then going in to say your captive is already licensed, it's ready to go, you're going to go ahead and have a captive manager, which is really awesome. Some huge companies, they are able to do that in-house, but a lot of times they'll outsource it to someone like Sherry, or just some of the other big companies. And what those captive managers do is they act as that quarterback for the company. So they're able to communicate with your legal, your tax, the regulators, and all that super fun stuff. And they just kind of act as that point person. But usually the consultant is still kind of on board as well. And just kind of touching on that regulatory stuff. So you may be wondering, what are they regulating? So what the regulators are doing is they're just ensuring that you are actually an insurance company. And so they're just checking your claims. They're making sure you're capitalized. So that way, if you do have a loss that maybe is a little too big, you don't go and drown in the water, which is really great. And we really appreciate our regulators for doing that. But also a really cool part of the regulatory thing is they get to go out and advertise their domicile. So at a conference like VCIA put on by Vermont, the regulators are really involved in just getting to know the business and consistently educating themselves just on the industry, because everything is always changing. So the regulators are always a friendly face. I feel like most of the time they kind of get a bad rap, but they are always a familiar and friendly face. So a fun fact, there are 38 domiciles in the United States, so not every state is a domicile. But as Sherry mentioned, Vermont is #1, and then Cayman and Bermuda fall quickly behind that as well. What else? Oh, investments. We'll touch on investments as well. So just really quickly, once you build up some extra money in your captive, you're allowed to invest it, and that can kind of go towards extra expenses. So you can pay some dividends back, you can invest in risk management personnel as well as equipment and all that fun stuff. Sherry, do you have anything else to add to that?
That's pretty good, Caroline. I think the reality is it's not just, and I think people sit there and they say, well, I don't have a broking license, or I don't have, I don't have investment experience. The captive industry is really unique in the fact that there's a lot of opportunity, no matter what your background, if you're willing to learn. It is an always growing industry. There's always new things coming up, whether it's a coverage line, cyber, 10, 15 years ago. Nobody thought of cyber. Nobody was concerned with cyber. No offense, 10, 15 years ago, we were still probably using those big clunky phones. But it was, it's an always changing environment. There's always new things coming up. There's always new things to learn. And if you have a desire to learn and grow, there is so much opportunity in the captive and insurance industry. I have people who came with English degrees, history degrees, poli-sci degrees. It's not what, that's really cool. Sometimes if you have a poli-sci degree, if you want to do political risk, hey, I'm happy. But there's so much opportunity within the industry if you're just willing to really learn and pay attention and grow. It doesn't necessarily. Now, having a risk management degree, obviously that's awesome because it kind of gives you that head start. So we highly encourage taking courses, learning with Spencer, taking those opportunities. And the fact that you're here today is amazing. So we thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it. But there is, as Caroline mentioned, there's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, the insurance industry itself is going to be seeing over 400,000 of their seasoned professionals retiring in the next few years. And that's because a lot of us are baby boomers, right? So we're hitting that age that we're ready to retire. And the industry has recognized that there is going to be a huge need to bring in and bring up the next generation. And organizations like CICA, who are forming Next Gen, and other organizations are really interested in investing in that next generation and providing support. But not just that, is that myself as being a risk manager, yes, I own and operate a captive, but my specialty and what I know is limited to kind of my captive and my sector of the industry, real estate, correct? But when I go to these other events and I meet people like Caroline and Sherry, they open my eyes to all the different opportunities of things that I may not have thought of, the ways I can utilize my captive. So I feel like the industry as a whole, especially in the captives, because it is such a specialized subgroup within insurance, are all very supportive, highly intelligent, very engaging people who really do love what they do, and they share that passion with everybody else around them. So I really do encourage you, if you have anything in here that sparked your interest, reach out to any of us, because we're definitely here to kind of help guide and kind of even just give you some additional insights, because it is a little bit unique and specialized within the insurance industry. But even saying that, I don't think that there's a company out there. I think, Sherry, you were kind of talking about it. When you wake up in the morning, everything from getting up, brushing your teeth, eating your breakfast, getting in your car, driving to work, there's probably not a product that you touch that doesn't have a captive. I mean, it's so broad in what it goes to. And one of the biggest soda pop cola companies in the world doesn't even buy traditional insurance. 100% of all of their insurance is managed through captive structures. And that's both on their benefit side and on their traditional property and casualty side. So captives is a big industry that affects every other industry.
I won't lie. I love that Teresa brought that up, because I will sit there and I will get in my car and I'll be like, this is one of our captives. And then I like drive to a gas station and I'm like, oh, this is a captive. And then I'll like go to the grocery store and I'll be buying things and I'll be like, and this captive and this captive. So every day it's funny because I'll sit there and I'll be sitting there and I'm like, oh, this is a captive and this is a captive. It really is interesting how much of our lives captives are a part of, that kind of like the slide Caroline said, the best job you've never heard of. The fact that there's so much out there that captives touch and you would never even have a clue unless you're in the industry.
But as a risk manager, part of my job is risk transfer, whether it's from contractual risk transfer or traditional insurance programs, but then utilizing a captive. Right now, everybody's kind of heard about Florida and hurricanes and people trying to buy insurance in Florida. We have 51 assets in Florida. And the fact that I have a captive is giving me the ability to be able to navigate what we call the hard market. I have had insurance companies who've given me quotes that, based upon the work and the modeling that the actuaries help me with, I'm like, I know that they're overcharging me for. So I simply say, well, I'll put that into my captive. And all of a sudden the conversations change because they don't feel like they have the same chokehold on me, that now it becomes more of a negotiation because I have more flexibility in what I'm going to choose. So as a risk manager, nothing feels better than being able to go and sit down and feel like you're not in a position of needing them more than they need you, right? So I think the next thing that we're going to talk about, and Caroline, as somebody who's kind of newer to the industry, right, doing a great job, one of our rising stars, definitely in the industry. I think a big part of it and how I first met you was through a networking event at one of the conferences. So I think maybe you could kind of kick us off and tell us a little bit about how important it is to get involved in the various organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined the captive industry last June. So not too far, not too long ago, but coming into it, I didn't really know anyone. I knew my team, I work remotely. Going to my first conference, very intimidating because I'm like, I don't know anyone here. How do I do this? Luckily, the captive industry is very, very inviting, but a way that helped me just kind of learn and grow and just kind of gain that confidence was attending events. So why do you want to get involved? Because you want to build those connections. You never know when you want to maybe take a career path change, or maybe someone could be a potential client of yours one day or something like that. Just having those connections beyond just the professional connection, just getting to know everyone, getting to know, oh, you have kids, oh, you are involved in tennis after work, just getting to build more of a personal connection. It helps grow your business, but it also helps you gain confidence as well and making you feel like you have those people behind you. What we always say, what I always hear at conferences is you have to build your board of directors. Yeah, you'll always have one mentor, but having a board of directors behind you is a lot better. Just because you'll get a lot of different perspectives on how different people view life. Maybe you have someone on your board that's a little younger than you and they bring that next generation kind of confidence, or maybe someone's a little more senior but they have all that knowledge behind them and they have the great experiences. So I definitely recommend getting involved to build those connections and to gain that confidence as well. This also allows for collaboration. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a possibility you may work with them in the future. So our service providers, our actuaries, our investments, TPAs, which are the claims services, all those people you tend to work with, especially if you're on the captive management side. As I mentioned earlier, you are that quarterback. So having those relations makes it go a lot smoother when you're working with the captives together. Another is the ability to find the prospective clients. Just like I mentioned, you never know who's maybe looking to make a switch. Even if it's not right now, maybe it's in the future. I've seen a couple of those just through some of my boss's connections. And it's just really cool to see just those connections being built. But it's a very positive environment, but it's always just great to get involved.
And I will say from, I'm a risk manager, so I'm not building a prospect, right? I'm not looking for clients, but I am looking for third-party assistance. All those different career paths that we talked about, those are all vendors and third parties that I need to find and work with. And getting to know everybody at these conferences gives me a better perspective. Are these people I can work with, right? So if you're starting off in the underwriting and the brokering and some of these other specialties, as I get to meet you at these conferences, I build a confidence in the fact that I know we can work together because we've met each other before at these conferences. And listen, when I started off, it's not comfortable walking into a room, especially when you would be, now I'm one of the oldest in the room, but you be coming in or one of the younger, it can be uncomfortable. But stepping outside that uncomfortableness and really extending yourself, and listen, it's as simple as, hello, my name is such and such. This is my first conference, or this is my first time at this event. I work here. Really glad to make your acquaintance. And some people engage with you, maybe some won't. But that doesn't mean the next one. You have to kind of keep it up. You got to keep going. And the more and more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get. So just keep doing that. And all these organizations that are out there for the next gen, I highly encourage you to do that. It's a great way of building your network because those people are going to be your peers throughout your career. You are all going to change jobs and locations and stuff, but you'll build those connections. So it's really important.
I was just going to second that, Teresa, because even sometimes if you can meet one person, you can say to that one person, hey, would you mind introducing me to your team? And it just, that one person even can sometimes allow you to meet other people. But Teresa's point, you know, she can meet somebody and she says, you know, and I saw Amy O'Brien is on this call. I know Amy well. Maybe she goes to Amy and she says, hey, you know, I know that, you know, your group might not be able to help me here, but do you know somebody who's here that can? And you can use those to help. And so having those that maybe either you can go and you can help somebody find somebody else, because Caroline mentioned this, we're a pretty friendly group, I think, generally. That you can go to somebody and say, hey, can you help me find somebody else? Or do you know somebody, and have someone you trust who can help guide you to where you need to be, is really an opportunity that is phenomenal within our industry. Is the fact that we have we are very friendly and very close. And I know I work with Caroline, we're both in captive management, but I would highly say, hey, Caroline's great. I love working with her. She's fantastic. If somebody were to ask me about Caroline. So it's a really, we all play very nicely together.
We definitely do. So, I mean, you know, where do you go to network? I think that that's kind of probably the challenge that you guys are asking is like, how do I go ahead and do that? I know there's probably only a few of you that are in Chicago, but we have a couple of events. So, Rising Risk Professional is one organization, right? And there's several others in your colleges. I know that you probably have clubs and organizations that you can belong to now that'll help make you connections, even if they're not insurance specific organizations. They still build your network, right? Because we just showed you how all these different industries and specialties kind of interact. Make sure you've got your LinkedIn profile up to date. You know, that's an important, and make sure that you have somebody eyeball it and second look at it for you. I know Caroline, her organization has a lot of company events. I've been to them. They're a lot of fun and they're great networking opportunities. Caroline, did you want to talk about some of the events that you guys have and how that provides an opportunity for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So usually at these conferences, the different service providers as well as other companies will go ahead and put on events. So usually we'll do dinners. Sometimes we will sponsor the student essay contest every year at CICA. So we help just students get involved, but then we take them and we help them meet different industry professionals. And actually a few of them have walked out of CICA with jobs. So it's very good and it's a very friendly environment. But we sponsor VCIA, IC, which is the education, it's called the Associates in Captive Insurance, but they do a lot of continuing education. So my organization, as I know, Teresa and Sherry are very committed to the continuing education. So attending those events or just hosting webinars, or checking out a company's LinkedIn page. I know our LinkedIn page is full of just different information. If you just want to know why would someone choose a certain domicile over another or all that stuff, that's kind of where that LinkedIn comes into play. And I have a very personal story with LinkedIn. So I am a proud LinkedIn user. I actually got my job because of LinkedIn. So I had heard of my boss, Anne Marie, in a number of different ways. I was on a couple meetings with her when I was interning at the South Carolina Department of Insurance. So I reached out to her on LinkedIn. And then I was able to talk with her, and that's how I got my job here today. So LinkedIn is a very powerful tool. And I definitely recommend, if there is someone that maybe you're interested in just talking to, when you connect with them on LinkedIn, leave a personal message. I think you can say like 50 words or something like that, but that personal message will go a lot farther than you just going ahead and connecting with them. Because reaching out and forming that connection, maybe they don't do necessarily what you want to do, but they'll know someone who does. And then also just touching on the webinar. So most service providers, so your actuaries, TPAs and all that stuff, they usually do webinars through their company. I know, for example, Sigma, they have a whole webpage just dedicated to learning about the studies of being an actuary. Spencer puts on great webinars. If you wanted a more general insurance take and all that fun stuff. So just always kind of look, or if you don't know where to look, reach out to someone who may know, because we are always, I know me, Sherry, and Teresa are always more than willing to help. But even I'm sure your current colleagues would be more than happy to help as well. Sherry, Teresa, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so I know somebody said young insurance professionals. There's a few of those throughout. I saw this one's in Toronto, and I am Canadian originally. I am now a US citizen, but I'm Canadian originally. So I am familiar that throughout Canada, there are young insurance professionals in pretty much in every province. I know as well a good, and this might not be specific to, again, captives, but Women in Insurance Network. I know throughout most cities, there's a Women in Insurance Network. And so, captives are insurance, so I'll probably be there. You might see me. So there's a lot of opportunities. And the biggest thing I'm going to mention here is ask. When I was first starting out my career, I actually had a senior manager come up to me, a senior director actually, and said, how do you get to go to all of these things? How are you going to all these events? How are you meeting all these people? And I said, I ask. You don't lose anything by asking. So if you see a session you want to go to, if there's a conference you'd like to attend, and I get it. My company does it too. There's, sometimes if it costs $800 to go, that might be hard, especially if you're an intern. But at the same time, they might see a lot of potential in you and be willing to invest that. So ask. So if you see something you want to go to, if it's free, great, sign up. If it's not free and you think your company may sponsor you, ask. There's a lot of opportunities where in our group if you say, hey, this session's, $50, $100, they're willing to do that. But if you don't ask, you never know. So that's my best advice I can give, ask.
I will also say is that if you can include that as part of your conversation when you're being interviewed, right? I mean, you're interviewing that company as much as they're interviewing you. So you can tell them, what your plans are for future development and ask them what theirs is, and ask if there's opportunities. Could you have the opportunity to attend a specific conference, once a year, that you believe that it's important to your growth as a professional and growing your network? Worst thing they can say is that, no, we can't do that. It's against company policy. But because you've voiced that, then if an opportunity arises, they'll remember that you asked that question, right? So I definitely know that some young professionals now have been negotiating that. There was a young professional just graduated graduated last fall, and I had several interactions with her at several conferences, and she showed up at the big RIMS conference, the Risk and Insurance Management Society conference in San Diego, and I was shocked to see her. I'm like, didn't you graduate? She's like, yes, but I talked to my employer and I told them how important these conferences are to my growth and my education and my networking, and they're allowing me to attend two events per year. And so this is one that I'm attending. I mean, what a rock star, right? I mean, that she was able to negotiate that and have that understanding. And she hung out with us. We made sure she had all, we connected her with other people. I think I even gave her my ticket to go see Gwen Stefani, at the conference, right? So, I mean, it's important just to make those connections. And once you do, it's like Caroline said, reach out to them afterwards, drop them a short note, because when you do that, then I add you into my contacts. And then I keep you in mind as things come up, and I'll go into that list and I'll reach out and say, hey, there's this event or there's this webinar that, based upon what we talked about, I thought you'd be really interested in it, right? So, because I feel like I'm learning as much from you as I hope that I'm helping you guys along, because I think it gives me a fresh perspective. It increases my own awareness. And I am not the best when it comes to technology. So I lean into the younger generation that are in my office to help me with those things. So it's things to consider. Um, Sherry, do you want to talk a little bit more just about who CICA is and kind of what we do from a captive perspective?
Absolutely. So the Captive Insurance Companies Association, or CICA, does a lot of work. Again, it's very specific to the captive and risk management professionals. It's a really great opportunity for everyone to get together. Like I said, we're a pretty friendly bunch, to get together, share ideas. And because there's a saying in the captive world, if you've seen one captive, you've seen one captive. And because they're all so different, it's a really great opportunity for me to say, hey, Teresa, I haven't really been doing a lot with realty lately. What are you seeing? What's new? What challenges are you having? You know, what innovative solutions are you coming up with? Or I can go to Caroline and say, hey, as another captive risk management company, you know, are you guys facing any really crazy things? Or have you had, is there certain domiciles that are being really great with you this week and other domiciles that are maybe being really difficult? It's a great place for us to share information and ideas and really make sure that we're all elevating the captive industry, that we're all making sure that our clients are doing the absolute best that they can, and that we are providing them with the best services possible. So it's a really great opportunity for networking, sharing ideas. There is an annual conference for anyone who ends up in the captive industry more permanently. You can maybe negotiate that into your contract, as Teresa was just saying. Show up at the CICA conference. We do webinars. Obviously, we have groups. The three of us are all involved in CICA's Amplify Women. So we're very much working to grow the industry. We're very much working to make sure that we're educating and developing next generation's talent. And I just use two words, Amplify Women and Next Generation. And I'm going to let Caroline talk a little bit more because those are two specific groups within CICA.
Yeah, and I can go ahead and just add a little bit to both the Amplify Women and the Next Gen. So I usually thought that the insurance industry is a very male dominated industry, and a lot of females don't ever make it up to that C-suite. So something that CICA does is they empower us and they encourage us to just kind of go for those opportunities, take the next step to maybe just even ask for more money and stuff like that, if you believe that you're not being paid enough. And I think that is something that a lot of women are often scared to ask, but they empower us to just let us know, hey, it's okay. But we also are looking to educate everyone else. And we even have men in Amplify Women. So it's really great. It's a really great organization that we all just kind of network together. We put our heads together and just kind of think of new innovative strategies. And this webinar series is just kind of the start of that. And we are all just kind of going to work together to get some testimonials and stuff together to just kind of broaden our range and just show what we're doing and how innovative it is compared to the rest of the industry, especially since now DEI is becoming more and more prevalent, as it should, and making sure that everyone feels like they have a safe space to talk. And then going into the next generation, as everyone just talked about, there's a generational gap. And oftentimes that seems scary, but for us as a next generation, that's not. That just means that there's more opportunity for us to grow and grow quicker. So the next generation, it shows that now that we come out with risk management degrees, we might be a little bit more ahead than, say, 30 years ago they were coming out of college. So we just kind of show that we may not be equal, but we're really close in knowledge, and we just bring a different perspective to the industry. So Next Gen allows us to just kind of voice our opinions, but as well as educate maybe newer and younger professionals. So oftentimes at these conferences, there will be a Next Gen session, whether it's how to network, how did you get to where you are, or there's some other sessions as well, just professional, any way to grow professionally. So it's just a really cool organization, and there's a lot of different subcommittees in there. So you can be a part of it if you're interested. So everyone just gets the opportunity and no one's ever shied away. Teresa, Sherry, anything to add there?
I would just say, it's whether it's Next Gen, young professionals, rising risk professionals, there's a lot of different organization. And you don't have to limit yourself to one, because a lot of them kind of offer different perspectives and different subsets within them. So I think just kind of getting involved, and usually the cost to get involved is very low. I'm also part of the Chicago RIMS chapter. I sit on their board. We have a very large rising risk professionals group in Chicago, and we actually sponsor most of their events, right? Because we feel that that's important to help grow us as a chapter, is to support and uplift the next generation that's going to fill our board seats, right? So we're very involved in rising risk professionals and the events that they put on, and we give them grants every year to run those events so that we can keep the costs down for the young professionals who, you know, might be on a tighter budget and may not have the organizations that are kind of offsetting some of those costs. But again, if you don't ask, you don't know. So I still encourage you to talk to your bosses about it. You know, and if you don't know how to do that and want materials to support how important these organizations are, reach out to us, reach out to them. They'll be happy to help put together materials about the types of events that they hold and how that can benefit you as a professional in the industry. Sherry?
Just one final item is a lot of the time, especially for joining, Caroline mentioned subcommittees. If you get involved in any of these, to join a subcommittee usually doesn't have a cost. The cost is your time. So if you have the time and are willing to put in the effort, it's a great opportunity for you to network, for you to be seen by other risk insurance professionals within the industry, and to help further the goals of, and hopefully you're joining a committee that you find interesting and enjoy, but help to bring that to the future, help to really bring it forward, help to find new solutions, new ideas. It's a really good opportunity for you to not only be seen without spending a lot of money, but it's another learning and growing opportunity. So networking, learning, growing, with, as long as you're willing to give a little bit of your time. There's a ton of, whether, like I said, whether it's within RIMS, whether it's in young professionals, whether it's Next Gen, Amplify Women, there are so many groups out there that are always looking for dedicated, driven individuals who want to become a part of their organization. If you're willing to give some time, that they will open their arms to you and give you that opportunity to really make some more connections and become very vital within the industry with your ideas. And we appreciate them so much.
And I will say is that, you know, if somebody comes up to me and says, hey, I'm looking to fill this position, if you know anybody, it's these, you know, people that I've met through these organizations and these volunteer activities. Those are the people that come to my mind, first of all, because those are the people that I interact with, right? And I've developed relationships with, and we've had ongoing discussions about different things in the industry and how we're managing that. So I will put those people's names forward. You know, we sometimes, before we even go out to the general market, we'll hit up our own network, our own organizations, our professional organizations, to say, hey, I've got this position. Before I go out there, anybody have any recommendations or anybody you want to kind of put at the top of the pile for us? So it really is a great way of building that. And then don't forget about, you know, our contact information is here, so feel free to reach out to us. But don't forget about all these other resources and the resources within Spencer themselves and the different grants and scholarships that they provide. As I said, I'm very fortunate. I've had 6 internship grants through Spencer. My first intern now is a VP in a D&O brokerage firm, and he's killing it. My other ones are all doing very successfully. The industry right now for the next generation coming in, the amount of opportunities is really endless. So take advantage of all these. Even if you're kind of already graduated, you know, there is also scholarships to advance and take, you know, your education to the next level. So make sure that you're looking at all these different resources and you're utilizing them. I can't tell you how many times I've been on judging committees for scholarships, and we have a handful of applicants, you know, and that can be anywhere from a $2,500 to a $5,000 scholarship. And I'm like, really? This is, I mean, makes my job easy, but it's a little sad that not more people are applying for these opportunities.
I'm just going to second that. I know, even for some of these conferences, I know for VCIA, I think I saw Francis's name. VCIA, I believe, has a sponsorship program or sponsorship application to attend their conference. And so sometimes for these conferences, they'll have scholarships or they'll have some sort of grant available for you to attend, whether your company sponsors you or not. There's a lot of opportunity for you to find opportunities to get yourself to them. Because I know, especially as a student, you're coming out, money's a little tight sometimes. So, you know, I might not have $200, $400 to go to a conference, but if you can look at some of these conferences, see if they have a grant or a scholarship that can help you out, maybe that's worth it for you. And Teresa mentioned, sometimes they only get a handful of people. So your opportunities are sometimes really good. So.
Yeah, we have a question here about like, how do you find out about these? We have some of the resources listed here, but also go on to Spencer's website, go on to RIM's national website, but also look at your local chapters. So a lot of these larger organizations may have local chapters, and the local chapters, for example, the Chicago RIM's chapter, we offer scholarships. Usually, you know, we are targeting students in the Midwest because those the area that we serve. But if you're in a different state or if you're in Canada, look to those organizations. They all have chapters, and they will go ahead and provide those types of resources. You can go on to their websites and find out the information. And if you can't find it, send an email to somebody that's, you know, on the contact list of those websites and saying, hey, I'm a student. I was just curious, do you guys have any scholarships available or any other opportunities for networking? And right there, now you made a connection with somebody, right? So there's, you know, it does require some legwork on your part, right? But the resources are out there, and we can help direct you. And these, starting at this page here, is a really good start. Do we have any other? Let's see if we have any other questions. Let me see.
Fantastic. Yeah, lots of thank yous in the chat box. And we are right at time. So I wanted to take a moment just to say thank you so much to Teresa, Sherry, Caroline. If we could all give them a virtual round of applause, that would be absolutely amazing. But, you know, just lots of comments and thank yous. Thank you for your time within the chat box. Thank you for an excellent presentation and advice. So we truly appreciate you being here today with us and hanging out with us for an hour. For all of the students that are here with us today, as you're aware, during the summer, we host these sessions on a weekly basis. So I will catch you all next week, Thursday, which is June 20th. Our session is going to be from 1 to 2 p.m. Our presenting company is going to be Liberty Mutual Insurance, and we're going to learn all about how to conduct a successful internship. So I did pop several links within the chat, so definitely check it out. Check out all the different tabs on our Spencer webpage so that you can sign up for future webinars. And I look forward to catching you all next week. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.
You.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Bye.
Guys.